7 p.m. Central Standard Time. No matter how many times you called people and shared it and said, we need to go watch, Brad's on. He's on now and he needs our support. No matter how many times you have listened to me go to deep, dark places and even lighthearted places. No matter how many times you understood and heard that Wyatt had proceeded from my loins. No matter how many times you watched me change your life with my thoughts, my insights, my wisdom, and my temperament. Little did you know that you only saw me from the waist up. So what you need to ask yourself is not just, is this Brad Stine Issues? Not, is this just the podcast of all podcasts? Not, is this the podcast unlike any we've seen that we help subsidize ourselves because we believe so much in this man and felt so sorry for him. But what you need to finally ask yourself is, after all these years, do you think he's wearing pants? Stick around and find out. Well, I'll make it palatable. Ladies and gentlemen, you have wandered on to the podcast of podcasts, where all the rest watch to get tips. Welcome to Brad Stine Has Issues. Hey, Whitey boy, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's you, it's me, and it's those folks from all over the world. This is God's Comic Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. Wyatt, why do you think I use cacophony of clarity or comedy? Do you think the comedy and the Christianity and the conservatism, since they all had that it was just natural to add colliding and cacophony? Or do you think that was just serendipity, Wyatt? And I'm talking about serendipity with a C.
Well, I think you just wanted some clever alliteration.
Ah, that was cute. Well, listen, I am very excited to know that we are here, we are live, and I need to find there it is. I couldn't find it, son. I was looking all over the place, and I couldn't find the clip. It was like last week's was there, almost to tempt me to ask, touch me, and then I get him, he's like, this isn't it, this isn't you live, and I felt ashamed, son. Should I have?
It would have been funny to see how long it takes you to realize the comments aren't the same.
Well, you know what, and the comments are what matters. Folks, if you've been on Brad Stine Has Issues, if you've watched it, if you've watched the clips afterwards, if you've get on and subscribe to the YouTube Brad Stine Has Issues, if you have followed me on Facebook, you know that this show is always looking for some new angle, some new fascinating way to express itself, to talk about things, to bring some laughter at first. And have you ever thought about why I try to do the funny up front?
Keep people engaged?
Well, I'm not here to worry about somebody's marital status. I really am not. I think that's completely up to them, and for me to force them into an agreement with a opposite sex, and it's a lifetime agreement, I think it might be asking a little too much for a podcast. I mean, maybe it's me, but yeah, I don't see myself sort of being the Valentine's put them together kind of eHarmony guy. So for me to get the folks engaged, I think is just asking a lot. And who knows, there could be repercussions. I could be sued if I got them with the wrong person. So I don't know that that's the best solution to what I was seeking.
You hear that, folks? That's the joke the comedian came up with.
Hey, you know who's watching me right off the bat?
You are in good hands this podcast.
You're in good larynx, because my job is to speak words that make you think. Wyatt, have you been thinking lately?
I've been thinking you need some better words.
Listen, you guys need to know something about Wyatt Leroy Stine. Now, his life is filled with lots of drama. He has a school online. He's trying to become a computer programmer. So he wants to program computers. And then he wants to do game design, and then he wants to do podcast producing, which he does, and sidekicking. He just loves doing his sidekicking. But folks, I don't think anything can It all pales in comparison when it comes to his job at Lowe's. Because, you know, Lowe's to me is the epitome. If you weren't born to royalty, Lowe's would be the second best step. What do you think, son?
I mean, if royalty is the king, I guess Lois is sort of like the court jester. Not as glamorous a job as you'd think, but the benefits are kind of good.
You know who's glamorous, though? Nick Kress. He's number one on my list, son.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Nick Kress is number one on yours?
Yeah.
Karen Boyd is number one on mine.
Yeah.
How did we mix it up? Usually you're the one who fails at this.
First off, it's never how did we. You're the producer. Thus, if there's a mess up, it's always you.
Aren't you the guy who forgot to click on the link in time, and so therefore,
Well, you were supposed to set the link up so that it was an easy push button.
How exactly do I set up the link if it doesn't exist until after we start this?
Son, listen, if you can't work out these bugs...
It's not a bug. That's the intended feature of it.
If you're going to be literal, if you're going to be pragmatic, if you're going to try to stick to the game plan, if that's how you're going to live your life, so be it. I'm a free spirit, son. You should know that. I'm a maverick. I shoot from the hip. I don't know what's coming, but when it comes, it's majestic. And Nick Kress has ended up on my board, number one, or as we like to call him, St. Nick. But guess who number two is? And this has been odd. Joseph Smith. Now, he founded the LDS, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So Joseph Smith apparently is still with us, and he's now watching our podcast, probably to get some more insight to add to Book of Mormon 2, The Return!
Book of Mormon 2? I'd buy that.
Gerald Muja, Tuesday here. What? Gerald Muja, Tuesday here. Does that mean Tuesday's here like his name is Tuesday, but his name is Gerald? Or do you think he's in another part of the world where it's Tuesday where he is?
It's really hard to tell which one's more improbable.
Dink Adair, hello from Waterloo, Illinois. Carrie Tudor, hey Brad and White, everyone. Carlin Boyd, Benjamin Gregory, whatever, why would that be her call? Paul Brown, howdy neighbors. Force Bainey, hello Brad and White, may the 4th be with you. Wyatt, who's got the coolest name in all the time?
Force Bainey.
Lord have mercy, I need to have a name called Force. Aaron Dent, when are you coming to Texas again? I'll be in Texas this month. I'll be in Lubbock. I'll be in Lubbock, Texas this month. Thanks for asking. Douglas Kroll, First Doug. James Voigt, Chile. Ooh, I don't know where you are. That's still cold. It's me. Jane Laurel Robinson, and a bit of crazy. Douglas Kroll, hey, it's a happy day. Sammy Noble, yes, you do, and that's why we want you, especially since you speak truth while having those issues. Love you, brother. Keep fighting the good fight. Well, thank you, Sammy Noble. I will. Calvin Behringer's here. Hello from Vegas. Max Raymond Purdue, I'm done. How are you? Marcia Pointer Reed, good evening, Brad and White, and everybody. David Rowe, Cale Gamble, David Rowe, ouch. Susie Smith, I'm Danny Herring. Because we don't want to give away her location.
Oh, okay.
It's Danny. You know where Danny lives.
Canada.
Of course. Why else would we whisper? You know that Trudeau's onto them, right? He's probably listening right now. But I don't know. He probably won't understand anything I'm saying because he has a difficulty with too many words in a row.
Then why do we need to whisper? Why not just talk a lot?
I thought it was for dramatic effect.
But the audience can barely hear us.
How about if I stage whisper? Well, what do you think about that old Danny?
You know what?
Stage
On second thought, they're regular whisperings.
All right. Still able and happy to see you until Trudeau's censorship bill kicks in. Aw. Yeah, we're going to have to get her out of there. You think we could get all the Brad Steinians together as the militia, and we will storm through Canada. Won't be hard. They don't have any guns. And we'll get her out of here with her family. We'll bring them all. We're not going to leave her husband there. Why would you think I'd do that?
I don't know. You're the one who brought it up. You tell me.
Guess what? Susie Smith. I've got friends are listening. I've got friends are listening. I've got friends are listening. I've got friends are listening.
We get it. It was misspelled.
Okay.
Move on.
I just want to make sure I wasn't saying it right or I couldn't grasp it like she was speaking in Morse code. Okay.
More, that's not even remotely close to
Well, it sounded click, clock, click, ah.
No, it didn't. Just stop where you're ahead, or in your case, behind.
Hey, Nick Kress said, send him to Minnesota. I'll show him how to run instant replay. So Rebecca Ely Dwyer's here. She's from Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. David Sanders is from Abermel, North Carolina. Colin Wells. I'm in Australia. It's Tuesday. Oh, he's in Australia. Well, God bless you. Good day to you, mate. Paula Faye Marie Raunchy. Wyatt, what do I say about Paula Faye Marie Raunchy? What is it that she stands out?
4 names?
Yeah, and she's my favorite.
4 named lady.
4 named lady.
Okay, I'm starting to get these things.
You are. She's not in Canada, though. Don't throw her there.
Why? Who would, in the right mind, would ever say she's from Canada?
Hey, Louis Leon's here. Shauna Frederick. I always get skipped. No, you're right here, Shauna. And by the way, Shauna signed up for the Militia of the Mind, Mighty 10,000. We're going to get you. We're going to send you the QR code. That's right, folks. It's in place. Oh, and yes, Nick Kress and Karen Boyd have indeed already jumped in. They're savvy. Nick, I'll bet you figured it out. I'll bet you Nick signed up for the Mighty 10,000 before it was even available. You know why? Because Nick has a tendency to end up in places nobody else ends up, in front of the line. Nobody knows how he get there. Nobody knows how he got out. All we know is he's like a guerrilla warrior. He's like the ninja. He just sort of shows up from the jungle, does his damage, and fades into the night. Or not. Let's see. Sean Syriac. Cool sound effect, the robot. Let's see. And then he says he can't wait till I go to the Northern Maine. I'd love to go. They don't invite me. Northern Maine doesn't invite me. You're telling me there's not one church there? Gee, many crickets, white. Let's see. So, anyways, I think I've kind of hit everybody at this point. At least who have so far said hi. I'm going to shove my hair in here because it was kind of hanging in my eyes, if that's cool, Wyatt. Listen, I want to talk to you, son, about Lowe's. You know, I've always make fun of Lowe's, but let's face it, they've paid you well. I mean, they pay, what, $30 an hour?
Lowe's?
Yeah.
Lowe's.
No? Well, wait a minute now. I thought you were the legged plank. I thought you were the birthday legged plank. They're a little.
No, they haven't returned my calls yet.
All right. Well, anyway, so they don't pay big? If you guys don't know and you're just tuning in, my son works at Lowe's part-time, and interesting thing, believe it or not, hardware store, they should have a sitcom about hardware stores because funny things happen. For example, and this is off the cuff, what, anything interesting happened at Lowe's?
Actually, yes.
Oh, okay.
So recently,
Yeah.
when I was, closing the store, staying up late, the lawn and garden area, they were saying with the intercom, hey, we need you all here. There's going to be some frost tonight, and we don't want our plants to die. So as I'm walking there, because, I've got to do it, they basically explain they're just going to get some tarps and put them over the flowers so that they don't, they don't frost.
Okay.
When I got there, they...
Little flower jackets and scarves and beanies?
That actually would have been more effective than what they did.
Okay, when
They got the literal thinnest, most pathetic plastic wrap I think I've ever seen in my life.
Like saran wrap, like you put your vegetables
a
in?
little bit thicker than saran wrap, but
Okay.
not much.
Okay.
And then they just draped it over all the things. Like, when I say draped, I mean like a tent. So there's plenty of open space
Okay.
over there.
Right.
So it's not really I'm going to do much.
Right.
And that was about 30 minutes of doing that.
Yeah.
And eventually, the guy in charge, he was like one of the higher up people.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's move out to the front and do the same thing. Now, the front's different. The tables are a lot bigger. So in order to get the saran wrap to actually stay in one place, what we did is we would take the flower pots and actually put them over the edges of it to keep it in place. So,
Like weights.
Yeah, like weights. We've been doing that for 20 minutes when I look over at the guy who's, again, running this.
Yeah.
He's weighing down the top, and putting the flowers on the outside of it.
Yeah.
This man, the leader, the guy who came up with this idea, is the only person who doesn't seem to figure it out.
Okay. And what did you learn from that? Let's get in tight.
Just because you're paid the big bucks doesn't mean you have the big brain.
Is this your manager?
No.
Is it
Trust me, if it was my manager, I would have much more to say.
So they took the flower pots that was supposed to be wrapped, and he used that as the weights to weight down other flowers.
Yes. When we did it, we just tucked the top underneath itself so that the flowers that were weighing it down are still in the thing. This guy, and the best part is, when he pressed, his response was, sacrifices need to be made. Despite the fact that everything else was completely covered on every other table but his.
So there will be collateral damage, and he was ready to let that happen. So
No, he created the collateral damage on purpose and then said, this is fine.
Wow.
So, yeah. Just because they're the leader doesn't mean they...
Incompetent! I did that for Danny Heron. You know they speak French over there. Incompetent!
I thought that was Canadian.
Well, French. Listen, I got to tell you something. You know how I like to put clips out on the internet, right?
You don't.
Huh?
You like telling other people to. Little behind the scenes for your folks.
Let me rephrase that. You know how I like hiring people to put out clips on the internet?
No, you don't. You just hire me for free.
Let me rephrase that. You know how I like to demand that you send my clips out onto the internet?
Oh, of course, all the time.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I wondered if you'd seen this one clip. Now, here's something that I wanted to talk to you guys about today, because I was just in Wisconsin. Now, I was in Beloit, Wisconsin, which is kind of like at the edge with Illinois. And I was at a wonderful, Adam Meyer is the pastor there of a church. It was a wonderful church. And we had a great time. And then from there, I left and I went to the Cup of Joy in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Wonderful group of people there. Jan runs that place, and they always bring in some great, usually Christian acts, every weekend. And full house, 2 full houses. Well, first house full, the second house wasn't full to the back. But great crowds, loud, powerful energy. And I'm working out my new material. I'm working on my brand new comedy material. So, you know, Wisconsin's an odd duck because they definitely are... have a lot, like most of America, a lot of conservative folks and a lot of sort of originalists and patriotic folks, but they are ruled by the blue cancer that inculcates itself in different parts of all of our states. The one they get into the power positions because that's all they're about is power, and the Republicans do nothing about it because all they're about is power as well, given the illusion that they don't want the left to have power. So I've exposed these despicables for years, but I appreciated being in a place where, you know, they don't always have the thought of they're very conservative or they're very sort of originalists when it comes to America and its values and who we are. And there was tons of them, and I had a wonderful time. I always have a great time in places that have a lot of left-leaning because the few right-leaners are so excited to have somebody that's speaking for them. And it's brand new material, by the way, so if I'm going to be in California this weekend, I'll be at Rob McCoy's church, what's it called? Godspeak Church, Godspeak in Thousand Oaks. I think it's Thousand Oaks, Rob McCoy, in California. So I'll be doing the Mother's Day services on Saturday night and then Sunday. So there'll be some laughs, but there'll be services. So if you're in California, see, I want to go where they need God stuff and unapologetic and courageous and strong. And so I'm going to be there, and I want you all to show up. If you're in California, come say hi. Let's get a picture. And that's what I should do, Wyatt. If people from the podcast come on, we should take pictures and we can just put them up and let them see them having met me. Because, Wyatt, I've met me. So every time I get a selfie with me, it's like somebody's taking a portrait because it's me. But those other folks don't have that. So an exciting time for them is to get a picture, which I find interesting. You wonder if in the Renaissance they would stop somebody in the street and say, let's get a picture, and then somebody would paint it, the two of them. I don't know. Maybe the cavemen or the Egyptians would chisel in the features of the two. How would I know, Wyatt? And why are you even asking me? I think it's a lot of presuppositions there.
Nobody was asking me.
Okay, well, I just figured it was worth an experiment, see if it was a chuckle-worthy, but also if it was something that we, because you don't, when I was growing up, Wyatt, one thing that women hated was getting their picture taken. They hated it. If somebody wanted to take a picture, when I was growing up, especially to the women, they'd be, no, don't take my hair looks, I don't have the right black, I just not iron, I made my shoe, I just woke up, I can't, got a snotty, lots of photos, Wyatt, back in those days like this, and like this. Now, your age group, and again, maybe the dumbest group of humans ever invented in human history.
Thanks, Dad.
Well, I didn't make you dumb. I made you so you could become smart. And you have to make that call. And you are smart, son. You know I don't really put you in the category of some of those friends that you have. Well, you know what? Your friends are all smart, too. Think about it. Your friends, you got one friend going to be a doctor, and you got one friend that's going to be... he's the one that puts the creases in the potato chips, the chip creaser.
Yes, the Lay's ladle.
Yes. Anyway, so you got some pretty eclectic friends out there, but I always put out these clips, or as my son likes to say it, you never put out the clips, somebody else does it for you. But I do put out the clips anyways because that's my body of work. It's my ministry. It is a ministry. And by the way, and if you've been on Stine Has Issues, you know, I never wanted to be in ministry. Wyatt, see this right here? That does that. And I got to tell you something. I want to rip the mic off and throw it. I want to take the GoPro smack. This kind of stuff is really bothersome to me.
Well, it's entertaining for me.
Well, I just wonder if there's a way it could be fixed somehow so that I don't have that.
There's nothing wrong with it, though.
It bothers me.
That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. That's how the headphones are designed to go.
Okay.
Wait, hold on.
No, I went over my back.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me think here. Do you have the cable on the right side of your face?
Yes.
It's.
Well, if you're saying that this side is the left side, I know, but guess what? If I do this.
It's behind your back naturally. What's the issue?
That's all. That's why I asked if you could fix.
Yeah.
That was the fix I was wondering about.
Yep. That's what I thought.
Well, let me tell you.
Once again, audience, your entertainer for the night.
Let me explain something. Wyatt, you're my producer. You're my sidekick. Right? You're my son. You are my acquirer of gear. You bought these, and you know what you never told me? Not until this second. That these are left-handed headphones. You never told me that.
You want to know why? It's the right-handed.
I don't understand.
You've been putting them on backwards this whole time. They've always been like that. This is not a new development. That's how headphones are usually designed, to have the cable on the left.
Why?
Is there a problem with the wire?
It's just...
currently, is there a problem with the wire?
No.
That's why.
Okay. Well, here's what I wanted to... Now, folks...
Did you really not know that? That the cable was... Oh, my... You know what? This is the thing I'm writing down for the clips tomorrow.
Listen, let me tell you something, and don't you dare post... the left-handed headphones, because...
Oh, I'm doing it front and center.
No, this would be front and center.
Well, no, it has to be on the right side for it to do that.
And that'd be dumb. It just, to me...
Who would ever do that, right?
Well, anyways, here's what I was getting at, folks. So as you know, and if you haven't heard yet, if you're not catching up to what I've been talking about, I am constantly editing clips and putting them out on the internet. And so as I do that, people comment on it. They do comment. And something interesting, I found some interesting comment. I wanted to mention it to you guys because I just found it kind of telling. It's something that I see a lot on the internet. People show up, the new atheists who are very, very uneducated at philosophy and logic and reason, and all they do is just mock and ridicule because they enjoy inflicting pain on people they don't like. And it's the sorry state of atheism. They choose it because it's all they get is hurting others to give them a sense of worth. But you get this all the time, and so, it is what it is. It's the nature of the beast. But I put a clip out that was actually at Celebration Church is where this was filmed, which is a church in Green Bay, which I was just at, but I wasn't at the church. Mark Gunger's church. He's a great pastor. I've interviewed him once. He has a great marriage seminar, Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. But I got a clip from this, and the clip was making mention of a reference point that I make from the Bible, where we were told there is no male or female, no bond or free, no Jew or Gentile. And I made this reference of understanding that what's made Christianity unique with that particular phrase, it's the only religion that ever figured out a way to show humans how to get along, because it showed us how to disassociate ourselves from identity politics. This is 2,000 years ago. Identity politics or group identity, and allow ourselves to sort of find, yes, there is a group, the child of God, but then you're also an individual with unique characteristics that God made. So I did a little clip about that, and people responded to it. And I just wanted to show you what I found interesting about two responses. So we're going to do this. So I'm going to play that clip right now. It's 2 minutes long. Give it a look, and then I'm going to respond right here. White, if you would, use your Lowe's skills and techniques and run the clip.
All right, cool.
Judeo-Christian belief system that created the West, which you're part of, that is the only belief system in philosophy and human history that taught us how to get along. You cannot escape the fact that we are now in conflict in America with a counterfeit religion that came under the heels of the Frankfurt School in Germany in 1929, who decided to institute cultural Marxism into the West. They came to Columbia University and began to infiltrate our academia. And from that point on, critical law theory was created, of which they would say that all must be criticized. Everything from the West must be despised and destroyed so we can recreate us in our Marxist image. From critical law, legal law theory became critical race theory. And instead of seeing people as equal under the eyes of God, the way that this founders wanted it to look like, even though they weren't there in the beginning, of course, because they're filled with sinners, they said, what if we were to create a culture where we actually have an opportunity for people to try to blend in and find oneness? It had never been done in human history. We're still the most eclectic nation on earth. And from that came critical race theory, and we now live in a completely new America where you aren't allowed to speak if it doesn't fit this party line. Which means if the people no longer have control as the government, then the republic is dead.
So, as you know, I never make it easy for people. Don't want to make you be comfortable. Let's just make everybody miserable during my show. But it's what God tells me to do sometimes. But that was just a clip about the idea of how the Bible does tell you how to get along with humans in a way that no other religion does, because it tells us things about ourselves, like we're intrinsically evil and that we have to seek the good, that we are in sin and that God has redeemed us. So there was just all these information that even if you don't believe in Christianity, if you attach it to how the reality of the history of human race, you'll see that it works. It works. It does seem to indicate and explain truth to us in a way that is played out historically. Those who, for example, believe that people are really good, and if you just teach them good things, they'll become good, find out rapidly that that simply breaks down. It just simply has never happened. We always have to teach people to be good. You don't have to teach them to be bad. That comes naturally. So I put that out, that little clip, and I get people that, of course, start talking about it. But I want you to listen to what one guy said. So here's what he said. He said, not true, because it says what makes Christianity unique, right, from the other religions. Not true. You should learn about Buddhism. SMH, basic Buddhism. What does that mean, SMH? Why?
Shaking my head. It's an acronym.
Oh, shaking my head, basic Buddha. The Buddhist emphasis on cultivating loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity includes developing caring and empathetic attitudes towards others. I think that this is teaching how to get along and is far older than Christianity. Also, Buddhists didn't murder during Crusades, or kill witches in the Middle Ages and beyond, or subvert truth by taking out books from the original Bible, nor protect pedophiles like the Catholic Church did for ages. But, okay. So that's what he says. And so I answered him, Buddhists are killing Christians in Myanmar as we speak, because they are. Here's his answer. They're not Buddhists then, laugh out loud. They're not Buddhists then, because I just told you about what they really are. So if they're butchering Christians, which they are, well, that's not Buddhist. They ain't doing Buddhism right. That's the exact opposite of the belief system. It would be like a Satanist pretending to be a Christian. Shake my head. Just because they say they are, doesn't mean that they are. Just because they say they are, doesn't mean they are. Now, it's funny how he's making reference points earlier about what Christians had, in the name of Christianity, had done badly in the past. Suddenly, he's making a claim for Buddhists who did horrible things, and he's letting them off the hook. That's not even them. That's not what it teaches. Now realizing he's making a point for my perspective, which is every time a person in the name of Christ does something un-Christ-like, the Bible is self-correcting. You actually find the answer to this is evil to do this in the same Bible that said, here's how you're supposed to do it in the first place. So he suddenly defensively protects his own lunacy. Because remember, Buddhism, if you reach the pinnacles of Buddhism, you reach nothingness. Literally, you reach nothingness. That's what they're trying to land, is nothingness. And nothingness doesn't have compassion and love and protection and sweetness and getting along. Nothingness is nothing, and that's what you're shooting for. But yeah, you got the high ground. So here's a guy immediately defending his people, but not realizing I can apply exactly the same technique to the crap he accused my people of doing. It would be like a Satanist pretend to be a Christian. Just because they say they are doesn't mean they are. How one acts defines their beliefs, not the words. Or isn't this something Christianity teaches too? I can say I'm a rabbit, but I'm acting human all day. True Buddhist embodies those principles above, same as a true Christian embodies their beliefs, which is why so many are just playing the part too. Christians have killed far more people than Buddhists. I assure you. Show me the evidence. And if Mormons are considered Christians, we can count the many, many that were killed on the way to settle where they are now, as that happened in the 1800s. Spreading. So, okay, so my point was that he is taking a particular stance for Buddhism. Fine, good for you. Take a stand. I believe in freedom, as opposed to the Myanmar Buddhists who are butchering my people. But he's right. People have used the name of Christ in inappropriate ways throughout history. There is no question. But as I said, whenever it was corrected and changed, it was based on principles in the Bible that said, this, what you did in the name of Jesus was never him ever. That was never him. That was never what he taught. That was on you. So he made my point. Now, I did notice that he did kind of add, well, okay, Christians are in the same boat. So he did throw that in. So I'll give him credit where credit's due. I'm not here to lie or to spin something. But but the thing that I found interesting was he made an accusation against Christians, speaking about how great Buddhists were. I said, Buddhists right now are killing Christians. And then he said, but that's not Buddhist. All right. So then I got this other letter. Hinduism is the religion with the beliefs of Sarvadharma Sambhav, meaning all paths lead to the same destination. This is why Hindus are the only religion that can coexist with other faiths in peace. So Hindus are really the ones that get along, whereas Abrahamic religions, especially Islam, are exclusive. Consider all non-Muslims as infidels, and they are also intolerant of other faiths, and that's true. But Hindus are the only religion that can coexist with other faiths in peace. So I wrote him this. The exact same thing I wrote to the other guy. I just changed one word. Hindus are murdering Christians in India as we speak. Because they are. How do you think he answered? Those aren't Hindus. He did the exact same thing the Buddhist guy said. The exact, well, now, Christians, when you do something, that's Christianity, how evil you are. But when we do evil, that's not really us. Find one line of scripture that encourages them to do that. Then we'll do the Quran. So I'm just making a point that both of these guys put down my religion. I talked about how now, not during the Crusades, I'm talking about hundreds of years ago. I'm not talking about thousands of years ago. I'm not talking about misrepresentation. I'm not talking about pedophiles in the Catholic Church. And yes, the Catholic Church failed miserably on that. There should be people in prison for that, let alone just defrocked and do whatever they do to people that do this evil. Yeah, I'm with you. But the Bible teaches us that that's what you should do to people that do evil. It's in the same Bible. There's nobody in the Bible that says be a pedophile. It doesn't exist. Matter of fact, it's the opposite. Every time Jesus really wanted to put some hard power down, don't screw with children. Or put a millstone around your neck and throw yourself into the ocean. So they immediately backpedal and defend themselves saying, oh, no. If they do it, well, guess who else does that idea? And has for 100 years? Communists. Every time you get an AOC or you get a Bernie Sanders or you get a Black Lives Matter or anybody who's a socialist Marxist, and we say, what about Stalin? What about Mao? What about Pol Pot? What about Khrushchev? What about Kim Jong-un? What about the butchery, the rape, the death, the destruction, the torture, the starvation, the imprisonment, the human rights abuse of the Uyghur Muslims right now in China by the communists? What about all that? They've killed and butchered more than any religious and ideological war group in human history combined. Atheist-driven Marxism. What about those communists? Look, we see what it does. And they say, oh, that's not communism. They didn't do it right. If they did it right, would have been nirvana. Would have been utopia. So I just wanted to point out how we're all kind of trying to figure this thing out. We're all hyper-defensive. We're all out there trying to find what the truth is. And it's costly. And in the end, if you're wrong, it's the greatest mistake you made. And if you're right, it's the greatest joy. So that's what I'm trying to discover. I don't talk about Christianity because I want you to join my group, my religion. I've tried to study these others and tried to understand them, and there's simply no other belief system like Christianity. There isn't one. And nobody else has a real guy who was historically accurate, who died and rose from the dead, and people saw it. Nobody. It is the single most distinguishing element that makes Christianity different than every other religion. None of them have that. They'll never get it because none of the other ones are true. You know, I got a guy on today that you guys are going to like to listen to. He's somebody that, if you're down south, you probably have heard this guy before, if you listen to the radio. Especially if you're in Alabama, especially if you're in Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Florida, probably North Carolina, South Carolina, I'm guessing. I don't know how far it goes. But he's a radio host of a very well-known Southern radio show known as The Rick and Bubba Show. Some of you might have heard of it. If you did, please say so. And I'm going to bring him up in just a second, but I do want to make a quick shout-out to somebody. Wyatt, Lars Kosh is here. He drove from Portland, Oregon, down to Eugene when I was there last week. So it's a 2-hour drive to see me. And Wyatt, it was the greatest day of his life.
That's the sentence? I thought there was going to be more of that. I'm sorry.
It sums that all up, son. It was the crowning achievement of his life.
Well, good for him. I don't want to dash his dreams, but really, that's
2-hour
that's
drive.
the best.
2-hour drive to see your dad.
That's
2-hour drive to see your dad. And it changed his life. Well, listen, I know, no. I left you stunned. I left you unable to speak. That's what.
It's like
that's what happens in my presence. I understand.
It's like, to what extent,
I just thought you'd be used to it. You're my son.
It's just, to what extent do I make fun of that, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, if this guy is serious, then that's great.
Yeah.
But if not, I have so much material to work with on that. But I'll be nice. I'll play nice. I already got you for the headphones. I suppose I'll let you off easy, too.
Listen, I got to tell you something. Karen Boyd has heard of the Rick and Bubba Show. She just said, "Hey, Rick and Bubba," and she's excited. Well, guess what, Karen? Rick Burgess is my interview today, so you're going to love it. I don't know if you've ever met him. He's a wonderful guy, great Christian guy. You should listen to him preach. He's amazing. But we're going to talk to him. He's a radio host and a very, very, very successful radio host in the South. I don't know how far deep it goes, but I want to tell you guys quickly before we go to this amazing interview, which you will enjoy. So the militia of the mind is afoot. I told you guys it'd be a soft launch as I get more and more pieces to the puzzle. But here's it if it's you for the first time. I'm going to partner with different ministries, conservative groups, patriot groups, pro-America groups, Second Amendment groups, First Amendment groups, and put them connected to me strategically in my militia of the mind. So what it is going to do is they're vetted folks that have a very specific role in America trying to defend and give power back to the citizenry so we can defend ourselves. So you'll be able to, if you join up and become a militia member, militia of the mind, because we're going to outthink them, outlive them, outwork them, outfight them. We're going to do what needs to be done to retrieve. That's what we're shooting for. We'll see if God lets us. But if you want to be part of the mighty 10,000, it's the first 10,000 Americans that give $3 a month to say we want to be the first to create the regiment that begins to go forth and see if we can change this nation. I'm not saying it's going to work. I don't know. But I can't sit around and do nothing. So here's what happens. You join. You can go on to my website now, bradstine.com. There's a QR code, and you can sign up and get your email, so I'll be able to contact you if I'm ever thrown off this. Eventually, this show is going to end up on my website, so everything will be there so we can protect it and defend it. This is where I'm going, and I'll be able to go even deeper when I don't have to worry about who's watching, you know what I mean? But you become one of the mighty 10,000, and if you do, and a few of you already have, you jumped the gun, but God bless you, you're my good fans, and a shout out to Nick and Karen who've already jumped in, and Janice Sizemore, I think, wants to get in, and we're going to send her some stuff. But here's the deal. You'll also be able to get a shirt that will have a militia of the mind. I'm trying to get the logo just right. And then right here on the sleeve, it's going to say Mighty 10,000, and it's going to have a number. And that number will be your order that you jumped in. So if you're number 1, it'll say Militia of the Mind. Mighty 10,000, number 1, number 5, number 200, number 600, number 3005, till we get 10,000. After that's done, there'll still be shirts, but nobody else gets a number. That will be yours as long as you're around and continue to support. You get to keep that. But we're going to add more and more opportunities. You can give more, by the way, if you want, and you'll have access to much, much more things. You'll be able to download my DVDs for free. You'll be able to, and depending on if you do special gifts, I'll even do shout outs to people of your choice, personal. I want this to be engaging, and we will have meetings that you can sign up and jump into and actually ask questions to famous people and people who are trying to do work in this nation that you can participate in with these big meetings. This is all what the Militia of Mind is. We're going to fight back, and you can participate. So if that interests you, just say so here on the on link, or go to bradstine.com. Sign up. It's easy, and it can be done now. And we're going to have a QR code. You can just put your phone there, bop, you're in. So that's where we're going. That's what we're heading to. And so I just want you to jump in. If you do ever want to give a donation outside of that just to help this grow and help us do it, you can always let me know just how you just want to do a one-time donation, and I can give you a link to that too. But we're going to fight, and we're going to see what God might do if we become the warriors that he called us to. He gave us this territory, folks. Let's hang on as long as we can. I so appreciate that you come out every Monday, and so I've tried to get more and more guests. And I've got I've got a lot of guests we've already interviewed, so they'll be coming soon. I have to pre-interview them because I got to go by their time. So we've got some great people coming up. But tonight, you're going to love it. If you know Rick and Bubba's show, you're going to know who Rick is. If you don't, but you're interested in radio or a radio host or what that might look like, you're going to like this. But just to hear his thoughts and his insights about what it means to be in that business and be a Christian and be conservative and to be a Southerner, and the caricature of the Southerner and all these things that these guys grapple with. It really made for a great interview. I think you're going to enjoy it. So get around, grab yourself what do you think they should grab? White, a Pepsi? Should they grab a root beer, a Dr. Pepper? I know you're a big pepper boy. I lost my sidekick. See that?
Never call me that again.
Pepper boy?
What did I just say?
Okay. Anyways, grab something. Grab some food. Grab some cheese. Grab a block of cheese, if for no other reason for people to walk in the room and freak out.
We only have sliced.
All right. Well, anyways, folks, you are going to love this interview. I promise, because I wouldn't bring them on if I didn't think you'd love it. So, let's jump right in. Join the Militia of the Mind. Be one of the mighty 10,000. Watch as we fight like men and women to return this nation to its God-fearing moorings. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview with radio star personality Rick Burgess from the Rick and Bubba Show. Enjoy. So, as you know, when I bring on guests, I try to be topical. I try to deal with the issues that actually matter, but most importantly, I want them to feel comfortable. So as you can see, I'm wearing my camouflage, deer hunting, bloody soaked, urine-filled hat because I'm going to be with a Southerner. That's why I'm wearing no pants. This is the key. You want to be as on the porch, cinder blocks as you can get when you're talking to Rick Burgess, because this guy has got maybe the top Southern driven, though I'm sure it's nationally known, morning show, the Rick and Bubba Show. As a matter of fact, over the years, if you were going to tour down south and you wanted to get known, you got on the Rick and Bubba Show or you were failing miserably. So I had the pleasure of being on the show a couple times, but more importantly, folks, I had the pleasure of getting to know Rick a little bit, and what shocked and surprised me, other than his teeth, was that he is a man of God, he's a man of integrity, and he's an American patriot. Now, I know that sounds like platitudes, it sounds like the things we're supposed to say, and it makes an easy audience for Christians and conservatives, but as you know, for Brad Stine Has Issues, I'm not about that. I'm about proactive, actual integration into how to defend our faith and our freedoms in America, because, folks, they're hanging by a thread, and we all know that. Well, the good news is, and there's not a lot, but the good news is there are fellow people throughout this country, just when you think you're alone, that have your back, and we have theirs, and this happens to be one of them. So if you are in the South, you know the Rick and Bubba Show. If you're not, I can tell you this: I'm from California, and This is not a typical redneck show. I mean, they have elements of that, but this is sophisticated. This isn't some kind of backwoods thing. So I appreciate what they're doing and what they stand for. But Rick happens to be my friend, and so I wanted to bring him on and talk about just the lay of the land, but also just our lives and everything that we do as communicators in trying to let people know what's going on in America, because Lord have mercy, we lose that, we might as well just return to the slavery shackles that they're trying to put us in, but not without a fight. And I can guarantee this man is a fighter. So please welcome to Brad Stine Has Issues, Rick Burgess, my brother.
I got to tell you something. I found myself almost wanting to listen to our show.
Oh, that has never happened.
What a build-up. It is great to be here. You are dressing like you thought I would dress. Thank you for the stereotype. Also, I'm dressing like I thought you would dress.
I know.
Because I thought, well, if I'm going on the show, I've got to be a little more sophisticated. You did mention that we are somewhat sophisticated. So I'm one of these people, I don't play golf because golf's not a sport.
Right.
And then there's a number of reasons for that. One, you play it in business casual. And number two, you can drink alcohol and continue to play. So
Right.
So there's no way that's a sport. It requires incredible skill,
Yeah.
but it's not a sport. And so what I've discovered is I don't like to play golf, but I like to wear their clothing. So I put some of that on today, hoping not to look too necky. And then you've just necked it up.
I know.
So now it's like I've gone from being interviewed by this really, really smart, funny comedian to now hanging out with my cousins.
I know.
So
Well,
it's
it's
a bit
like
of a letdown. It's a bit of a letdown.
it's like what is it? The Prince and the Pauper, or meets what was that girl that he tried to make into a sophisticated? It's like it's.
Oh yeah.
But this
Country
is legit.
Mouse, City Mouse. Yeah, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, but I legitimately said I'm going to just do a little Rick and Bubba-esque kind of Alabama vibe, and you coming on here going, I just at a Fortune 500 meeting.
Oh no, you know what? I can't take the shower back I took.
I know.
It was so unnecessary. I was trying to get ready for this interview, but all kidding aside, and we're going to still kid, I know, but I love being here. I've been looking forward to this. I knew it was just a matter of time before you would get into the podcast world. You and I met a long time ago. We've even done a little tour together. Tried to save America. No one would listen. And you've been on the show several times. You've been on our podcast, Rick and Bubba University. But I will tell you that this is not I promise you, we won't kiss on each other too much, but I do want to say this, and we'll get into this. One of the things that I think where we really gel is we both believe that you got to be in the world, but not of the world, as followers of Christ. But at the same time, we've got to earn the right to say what we believe by actually doing a good job. And so many times people say, I'm a Christian comedian, and you think to yourself, oh, I have to feel like I like this. I'm guilted into thinking that this is okay because I'm a follower of Christ. Or here's a Christian movie. Oh, because I'm a follower of Christ, I have to be guilted into acting like this is good when it's campy, or here's a Christian song, and no, it's not very good, but it's a Christian song, so I have to pretend like that I like it. I'm being guilted into it as opposed to it standing on its merit. Yeah. But I will say there's people in music that stand on their merit. There's starting to be movie producers that are producing good product that stand on their merit. Yeah. And you have always been a comedian that just happens to be a follower of Christ. I said that about myself. I do a radio show. We don't do a Christian show. We're Christians who do a show. But I think that's where we really gel. You're a comedian first who you're a follower of Christ first, who happens to be a comedian. Yeah. You don't come out and go, hello, I'm a Christian comedian, because then everybody goes, oh, I'm not sure. Is he trying to guilt me into liking this because I am too, or is he actually going to be funny? And so I like that you're angry. I love that. It's righteous anger. And those are some things that I really, really enjoy about what you do and how you've been gifted to do it.
Well, that's very kind, and clearly someone of your status, and of course, it's a radio thing. I mean, people might think, well, that's kind of a different category of fame or whatever. But listen, anybody that's in the entertainment business or in the business of disseminating information, you either stick around because people like you or you don't.
Yeah.
there's really nowhere to go. And because you too are not on a Christian station, you got to pull your weight, because they got to sell ads. And if you ain't any good, they're going to say, let's find somebody that can do this.
Yeah, I remember Christian radio. I got nothing. I'm not here to put an indictment on Christian radio. Please don't misunderstand me. But I will say this: the car dealer at some point needs you to sell him a car. He may love Jesus too, but if you can't move cars, then at some point he's going to have to go somewhere where people buy cars. So I'm in secular entertainment. I do not compromise. Throughout time I've learned to do it better. There's been times I've compromised my faith. I mean, I don't think any of us or pull it off perfectly, sadly, when you're trying to walk in the world and not of the world. But my intention is not to compromise my faith and to live out my faith in the world, but at the same time, give people a laugh, entertain. And as you said, just like us doing this podcast, if you and I don't evolve to the times, people said, well, you're a radio host. I'm almost getting to the point now, our salespeople don't even say it's radio. They say, would you like to do a marketing campaign with the Rick and Bubba show, which includes all their content? They've got a podcast. We have podcast archives of the show. We're on YouTube. You're on YouTube. We're live and archived on YouTube. So are you. Yes, we're on some radio stations, but honestly, Brad, terrestrial radio is becoming less and less important to what we do. Because I'm limited to by program directors and whatever the station covers. When it comes to our TuneIn app, for instance, that you can hear us anywhere in the world, when it comes to our podcast archives, which you can hear anywhere in the world, when it comes to us being on YouTube, which you can watch anywhere in the world, the audience is actually growing on the streaming platforms, live and archived, more than it is on the terrestrial audience. So yeah. We've had to get into all of it. It's all important. I love our radio affiliates. Don't misunderstand me, but that really is not growing the way the other stuff is growing. So now you're basically I remember the first day we had our youngest guy on the staff, and he was in a meeting with us, and we were talking about the future, and he holds up this.
Yeah,
this is an iPhone for those of you that are listening and don't see it. And you know what he said? You're competing with that now. You're not competing with other radio stations. You're not competing. You're competing with that phone. You better have content for that phone, or you're going out of business.
Well, and I never thought that I would be a Luddite, but I'm getting to that age where I literally have to go. What do you do now? You have to do a hologram with some kind of special cellular beads it's like, what the heck? I can't keep up. I would like to just talk and be me. I mean, there's so much you said that I just kind of want to discuss because it was kind of the direction I wanted to go anyways, and you just sort of ushered us right there. So let's start with how great you thought I was. Let's start there. But it was interesting because I'm fresh off the heels of, I just had done a show. It was at Arlington Music Hall in Arlington, Texas, performing. And a guy brought me in because he thought, it'd be good market for me as for what I stand for and whatever. And this is what I was telling people that know me, that are my wife or friends, that I've always remembered this, and it always comes back so robustly. And so, but I think there's some synergy between what you experienced and me. And here's what I mean. So when I started working in churches, to me, initially it was a revenue stream. It was just another place to go work, and I'm grateful to do that. And then I started talking about deeper things spiritually, and suddenly I realized this is a calling. Then I realized this is an anointing. Then I realized I'm a prophet to the church. All these crazy things of God bringing me from a guy who just wanted to be a comic into ministry. Rick, I did not, I didn't want to do that. Can I be a comic and throw a bone to God every now and again? And you don't get to if you're a Christ follower, you don't get to decide. He says, here's what I have you for. Go do that.
Right.
But the one thing that bothers me, and I want to get your take on this because you would have a good assessment, because you're kind of in the same dilemma in a way, and it's what it is. I like working in front of my people, and they love, a lot of them do, not the woke churches. They're gone. They don't want anything I have to stand for, but who cares? They don't believe in anything that is gospel and theologically sound and historically Christian. So they're gone. They're heretics. But for those who truly are God seekers and in Christ followers and truth tellers, those churches, and they're still out there. There's still some warrior pastors out there. I did a series in an interviewing some of the pastors, specifically what did you do for Corona and why did you do what you did? Because that told me everything I needed to know about that church.
No
was
question.
simply what you do for Corona. Told me who you are and what you stand for and what you're giving your people, because they look to you for guidance, right?
Absolutely.
So when I'm in a secular comedy club, if I'm in a secular venue, a performance arts center, whatever, where Christians can come or go, they can show up, but it's not their sanctuary, right? So it doesn't have that vibe that you're really in my church, so there's a certain expectation or even a hesitation to how they want to be free to respond because they're in their church and it feels like there's a certain constraint. But when I'm in a nightclub or I'm in a comedy club or I'm in a venue where it's there for entertainment, dude, I have so much more fun.
Yeah.
Because I can experiment, I can take risks, I can push the envelope. Now, that doesn't mean I'm being irreverent. Doesn't mean that I'm cursing. I don't curse. Doesn't mean I'm doing sex jokes. No.
Yeah.
I am what I am. I am a Christian man. I have a very specific way that I perform my comedy. I don't use curse words. I have always believed creativity is funnier than crude, and I've always tried to be the best I could be at the highest ranks of entertainment and comedy without compromising my faith, but being as creative and unique as I could be. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am. But maybe this is kind of a long introduction into where I'm going thematically, but I want you to understand this because I think you really will more than a lot of people who aren't, because you're in the entertainment business. Like me, you just have a different genre of it.
Sure.
But when I'm there, Rick, I miss that. I miss that time when all you had to be was funny. Now, of course, in the comedy clubs, you can say F and this and F and, I mean, they don't give a crap. You know, I don't do any of that stuff. But my people have somehow taught themselves to judge content over context. They don't have a nuanced view of art, how it must be used sometimes, and the tools that are given to especially comedy, sarcasm, irony.
I love it. Clever. Just being
these
clever.
terms, they are sometimes taken from Christians
Yep.
as great storytellers because they don't think it's Christian. And maybe what I'm doing right now is not so much setting up your answer as I'm lamenting.
I think you are.
But
I'm here for you. I'm now turned into your, I think I'm your therapist at this point.
you have some Xanax, please. But I don't know. So anyways, let me just go toss it to you. But I guess what I'm saying is, why can't our people allow us to be more sophisticated and be the best we can be and understand that if you're an artist, I'm not a pastor right now. You have to take me as a different category and allow me to explore if we are going to compete at the highest levels of art. Have you found, since you're on a secular network, with a secular show, so to speak, in other words, it's not a Christian show, it's not a faith-based network, have you found constraints that you feel our people put upon us that are just turn us into something less than we could be? I'll let you.
Well, the word that I was, it's funny you said that. I was just talking about, I went to see, I have I have 5 children. One of them has already gone into the presence of our Lord when it was actually this, when we're recording this, it is the week of January the 19th would be Thursday. And that's when he actually went to heaven. So we're approaching the 15th year since that happened. But the other 4 that are still here with me, they all work in some way, shape, and form in the entertainment business. But we have one that, it's one of those we wonder, is there something that my wife needs to tell me? Because of all of them, he has no desire to be in front of the camera. He doesn't want to be on the mic. He doesn't want to be in front of the camera. He wants to be the one behind the camera, producing and writing screenplays and producing film and editing, and he's really gifted at it, and he's banging on his craft now, and he's doing his thing. He's only 21, and he and I were having this very discussion because he's a follower of Christ. He's probably the most devout of all my children, by far, and he just bought in early, and he's the real deal. The others are in different parts of their faith. Some are a long way off, and some are somewhere in between him and that.
And that's
But
all your fault.
yeah, it is. Even though it appears they made some decisions on their own when they became adults that I would have never approved of. But anyway, but at some point, and God says, Rick, enjoy this. This is how I felt about you my whole life. But anyway, and I've been here forever. But anyway, so we were talking, and I said, even as followers of Christ, we can't be clunky with all this. We need to be clever. We need to be artists. We need to do it well. And we had just seen a movie where wokeness was clunky in the movie. It was embarrassing. I mean, I've seen, look, perfect example, All in the Family. All in the Family, Norman Lear and I couldn't be further apart politically. But when he made his points, his shows were entertaining. They were clever. They were incredibly done. They were well written. I oppose many of the things that Modern Family is promoting, but they do it well.
Yeah.
It's entertaining. It's well written. You and I are comedians. It's funny. Okay? Even though we disagree with the message they're sending many times, at least it's well done. But when we were making fun of this woke movie that was so clunky and so embarrassing, it's like, how can we haven't had anyone trans walk in yet and tell everybody who hates or that doesn't agree with trans that they're stupid, and they did it clunky. Over here, we love immigrants. Why do we have closed borders? And they did it clunky. Let's save the earth, man-made climate change, clunky. It's not that I disagree with them on these points or have a different worldview or in a different spiritual view. They didn't do it well. It was silly. And I told him, I said, now, we have to have that same commitment as followers of Christ in our art, because God did not say, I own some of the radio. He didn't say, I own some of comedy. If we have a sense of humor, then it came from God. Okay? And then when it goes out there, there's a corruption of it in the fallen state of people who do it as sin and as a perverted version of what he intended. But that doesn't mean that comedy itself is sinful, because it came from him. So the followers of Christ, now redeemed, would then redeem comedy, but that doesn't mean that it's not clever. It doesn't even mean that it doesn't have an edge. I find Jesus and the disciples at times to be quite edgy, okay, and counterculture. They were always counterculture. If you're turning the world upside down, now I think it's our job to turn it back. It's upside down, but in the wrong direction. We got to turn it back. So I agree with you. And so I find that if and you're going to be a little jealous of me here, I love the fact, but I guess you do get to do what you said about the clubs. I get to go on the air on the Rick and Bubba show, and I get to let all that, let's try to be funny. Let's try to have a good slant on this story. Let's see it from a way that's either humorous or you never thought about it before. Oh, by the way, and I'm loving that we're talking about being disciples of Christ and followers of Christ, because I got news for you, brother. The word Christian means nothing now. It means nothing. We better identify what we mean by that. You can say Bible-believing Christian. That'll throw people back a little bit. But there are now 38,000 different forms of Christianity. And if you look at the New Testament, that word was only used 3 times anyway. Twice it was derogatory in the book of Acts. And then Peter says in 1 Peter, let's adopt that as a badge of honor. So it's cool to call yourself a Christian. I'm not saying that. But where we miss it is there's not a person called a Christian in the New Testament that wasn't already a disciple. And what we'll do is we'll call you a Christian whether you're a disciple or not. And that's where the problem comes in. 250 times we're told the word disciple is used. So everybody who was called a Christian, that was a disciple being mocked. And then Peter said, take it as a badge of honor. And what we do is we'll call you a Christian if you make some claim of faith. We haven't vetted you out. So I like the edge that I never call myself a Christian. I call myself a follower of Christ, a disciple of Christ, because I want everybody to know where I stand.
Yeah.
So then we go out and we have the ability to be as funny or as funnier than the world by being clever and, as you said, not compromising with crudeness, not compromising our Savior. But at the same time, we don't need to come across as something campy, corny, that no one wants to be a part of if they were honest. My passion is men's ministry. We started a ministry called themanchurch.com. The number one thing I was taking on is I said, let's just be honest. Most men don't want to be in the church. And most men don't want to hear somebody in a church come out and say, tonight's our Christian comedian. They honestly don't. They're there, like somebody says, well, sometimes they're there. I said, yeah, because they're probably appeasing their wife.
Yeah.
They're not there because they want to be. Very few of them are there because, honestly, most of the church doesn't talk to them. You know, there was this ridiculous strategy that you reach the men through the children. You go get the children, then you get the wife, then you get the man. The only problem with that, that's not biblical. I think you've underestimated. A man will actually pretend something for the benefit of his wife and children, and they go back out into the world where he actually feels like a man. Yeah. So what we need to say is, no, we're followers of Christ. We are men. We're not feminized men. We're not castrated men. We're men. As a matter of fact, we're real men because we're actually part of the group that Jesus said would be the few. You know, the Marines said the few, the proud, the Marines. Jesus said, no, the few, the humble, my disciples. My pathway is narrow. The path is hard, and most of you can't do it. And so, and then we almost present a version of anybody can do it.
Right.
And how about this? It doesn't matter if it's done well or not, as long as we put the right label on it, to your larger point. So I love to be able to go on the show and say, we'll stand up against anyone that rejects Christ, and we'll be as entertaining, if not more entertaining than they are, and point you to our Lord and Savior, be unapologetic about that he's redeemed us, and the way that he says things are, that's the way they are, while at the same time, you know, whether you like us or not, maybe you got to laughing so hard today on the show that you thought, you know what, I kind of like these guys. And then once you kind of like us, we might earn the right to tell you about Jesus.
Right.
But what we try to do is give you the Jesus, and we haven't earned the right to do it.
Well, and that's what you guys do so amazing. And frankly, I don't even know how you were able to pull it off, because you are very much so a believer. I mean, you will not in any way shy away from that and be very specific terminology. Jesus Christ. I mean, things you're not supposed to, say in a mainstream format where you got some guy selling cars going, what's the Jesus? What's that all about?
Look, let me tell you something. There's no one, I would say probably 15%, and I'm probably being generous, probably 15% of the people who buy advertising on our show and put our show on the air agree with what we portray spiritually. About 15%.
Wow.
85% say I couldn't care less what they believe, they're selling cars.
Right.
They moved the relief factor. The My Pillows are rolling out because we've earned the right to say what we want to say through what? Ratings and revenue.
Yeah.
If it weren't for ratings and revenue, I promise you, the first thing the consultant will say is drop the Jesus stuff.
Yeah.
And the only time we've ever actually been removed for our faith was satellite radio. They did take us off. And here's why. Back to what we were talking about. They don't like the blending. Don't blend. Either be completely Christian radio or be over here on complete news talk or be completely crude in the humor. We'll put you on our comedy channels if you'll just be comedians. We'll put you on our religious Christian channels if you'll just be Christians. We'll put you on our news talk channels if you'll just be news talk. But you guys can't figure out what you are, so you're too secular for our Christian frequencies, and you're too Christian for our secular. Right. You're too secular for the Christian. You're too Christian for the secular. We don't like you. Make up your mind. You're off the air. But that goes back to everybody wants to box everything now, and you go and stand where you're supposed to stand. And I don't play that way, and you don't either.
No. Well, that's what's interesting, though, because, I guess what I was trying to understand, and I don't know what this means because it could sound almost arrogant maybe, but it's kind of like, when I started doing comedy and I was watching all the comics, lean left and put down God and America, whatever. It's an easy target, and because they happen to live in a free Judeo-Christian nation that gives them the right to mock Judeo-Christian nations. So you don't pull this off in the Middle East. You don't get to make fun of their. It's a different deal. They don't understand the golden goose they've been given, and if it goes down, they don't get that they're going down too. They think they're going to be the rulers, and they're just going to be cast aside like the idiots they are for standing up for these ideologies that's destroying everything that they think matters. They don't understand the blood that was shed to give them these freedoms, and it pisses me off.
There he goes. Have you noticed though? I see some comedians are beginning to wake up to the fact that if they let this wokeness go where it's going, they're going to be out of business.
They are going to be out of business.
I mean, they're starting to realize. I remember the first time that I couldn't understand it all. We had somebody on our show that was a member of the LGBT community, and the person made the comment on the show at the time of the Gulf War that they hated Christians more than they hated radical Islamic people because they thought Christians were more dangerous. I said, "Do you mean to you?" And she was like, "Yes, because the Defense of Marriage Act, and you don't want us to get married." And I said, "Do you have any idea how radical Islam sees homosexuality? Do you have any idea on this?" Of course, they didn't. I said, "You'd be dead. You'd be dead. Nobody hears. We may give you a tract. We may talk to you about God's plan for marriage and agree to disagree with you. We're not going to kill you. We're not going to hang you. We're not going to throw you off buildings." So even the things that the left and the woke coddle, it's to their own demise, and they don't understand it.
I know they don't, and listen. I mean, you're right about the comics because I'm so grateful because I've been doing this a long time. I've got a little bit of a brand name, but I chose such a unique, specific point of view. That's so odd for a comic. I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, I'm a patriot, I'm Second Amendment, First Amendment, originalist, religious liberty. I mean, I'm all these pieces of a puzzle that somebody has decided isn't real funny. It's not edgy. It doesn't have all this A, B, and C because it's not, and it's so disingenuous. The one thing I will hear a lot is they'll say, comedy's supposed to punch up, not punch down.
Not that.
You're punching, and it's like, dude, you guys didn't punch up to Barack Obama for 8 years. Not once. Not one time. You don't punch up. What happens is you're so used to punching at us, and because we happen to be so used to it, that we can literally separate our feelings or disagreement with the ideology and still appreciate the craft.
Right.
I don't agree with you, but you did that funny.
Yeah, just like you said a minute ago. Yeah, about those two shows. Yeah. I didn't agree with what they were pushing, but I gave them credit for being clever.
Yeah, they did it right. They did it well. It's like George Carlin was a very big influence on my comedy, clearly, if you watch me, because I loved his writing. And he was one of the crudest. He would get into some, and hated God especially at the end. I don't know what happened. But anyways, but obviously he could write. He was deep and creative and unique, and that's what I love. I love smart humor. So when comics finally realized this is literally like somebody going to an artist and saying, we've decided that we have to outlaw paintbrushes now. But anyways, it's like, I got to have words or I can't do this. And I've always said, historically, the comedians were the jester. We were given permission to mock the king and not get our heads cut off because somebody had to be able to joke about the culture, joke about the hard things, joke about the people we're complaining about, find some way to bring the monarchy and the peasantry to some kind of equality, realize somebody had to be able to do that because somebody had to let the steam out of the pressure that was happening around them, and comics were given that privilege. It was a unique category. You get to say anything. You get to say anything because
imagine Don Rickles today. Oh. How long will he even be out there?
No. You couldn't, of course not. But more importantly, and Don Rickles was way old school. You know, he started in the 50s maybe. So he really was during a time when there was no limits. But more importantly, honestly, if we're talking about art and in that, we couldn't do The Office. You probably couldn't do
very cleverly written.
Yeah,
Great.
you couldn't do All in the Family. You couldn't do I'm trying to.
You probably couldn't do The Jeffersons.
Yes, right. So these were shows that taught us how to kind of laugh at each other's idiosyncrasies and not take it personally. They taught it literally was a more mature culture, because it was teaching us your power over me isn't in how you perceive me or how you describe me. I don't give a crap. I'm good. I'm good with me. And here's what you and I grew up with. That these young kids aren't, is if you happen to be friends with I don't even know, minority or you know, I don't know, black guy, Chinese guy, Mexican, whatever, you gave each other permission to make fun of that.
No question.
And that was fun. What you were telling the guy.
Stereotypes are hilarious. And there's a sprinkle of truth in every one of them, whether we like it or not. You were kidding around with me being from the South.
Yeah.
Of course, that's funny.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I mean, everything you talk about, is that accurate to every person? No. But are there people here that fits perfectly? I'm sorry. And there's things about me that fits because that's my culture. And you make fun of that. And people said, yeah, you can make fun of mine too. Because I laugh at myself as much as I laugh at other people. But give me an example where I think we have to make this correction, why it's important. I was so excited when I heard that Kevin James, who I think is also a pretty clever guy, that he had a new series on Netflix and it involved NASCAR. I thought, this is gold. This is a gold mine. I couldn't wait to watch it. I thought, you know, Kevin's not too blue, so I know it's not going to be nasty. I don't ever see him being real nasty. And I said, and NASCAR and him trying to be like a crew chief, this is going to be hilarious. Well, when I watched it, to your point, this is modern day. See, this is a current project. He and the writers couldn't make fun of anything. And the show just laid there. It was not funny. It was not clever because what? Everything that would have been, they couldn't do. Yeah. So it just laid there, Brad. It went nowhere.
Yeah.
And is this what we want? Do we want to get to where there's nothing here that bothers anybody?
That's going back to what I was talking about when we started on stage, where I could really push some envelopes. And sometimes you got to pull back. You do something, you go, okay, I went too far. But the whole idea of having that freedom to sort of explore is so beautiful. As a free agent, autonomous human, I believe God gave me that, all of us. We're made in his image. That means we get to create things, and hopefully for a redemptive purpose. But, you know, it's kind of like, if you've been married I've been married 30 years. I think you've been married quite a while.
27.
One of the things about marriage is that you don't marry somebody just for and commit to them for the good parts. That's easy.
No.
The good parts are easy.
Yeah.
What really makes marriage beautiful, seems like we're off topic, but you'll see why I'm going this direction. What really makes marriage beautiful is that because every one of us has this crappy part of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
This bad part, this destructive part, this dysfunctional part of themselves that isn't fun, is annoying, is sometimes hurtful. And it's like, dang, fix this. I don't like this part of you. But what makes marriage sacred is you say, when I said yes to you, I said I will accept and endure the worst of you, because that's what you need most.
Yeah.
Somebody that will love me and see your idiosyncrasies as endearments.
Yeah.
And so, like, my wife would be late all the time. I couldn't stand it. And I remember thinking once, it's like, you know what, though? If something happened, you got a phone call, your wife was just killed in a car accident. I'd say, you know what I would give if she could just be late one more time?
That's true, exactly.
Right? I mean, one more time where she's
actually
not...
worked with you, I know. Why did you have to be on time that time?
but we find something beautiful about the parts of them that annoy us, and it makes us more mature, makes us stronger, because we're learning what it means to just become one and give to each other the dignity of their humanness and their brokenness, and say, it's okay, I'm still here, which is what Christ did for us, which is the template. But the reason I brought up marriage is that I think in some ways that's coming full circle, was why people of different ethnicities, different histories, different backgrounds would say, you have permission to joke about, you know, black people do this, white people do that, and the fat guy does this, and the skin guy does that, and that old guy does that. And because what you were telling them was, I trust your heart.
Absolutely.
I'm giving you permission to go into these very landmine, sensitive areas of me that you don't necessarily belong. I'm giving you permission. I'm opening the gate. Come on in, because I love you. I trust you. You're my friend. That is maturity, and it's a more robust country, more robust culture. Wokeness, leftism, Marxism, CRT, BLM is destroying that and actually turning us into monsters.
No, it is, because what you're really talking about is because we've got a whole society right now that cannot persevere. They can't handle adversity. Because everyone has kept them from experiencing it. I mean, my dad loves me. I know my dad loves me. I love my dad. I adore my dad. But my dad literally said things like this to me. What you just did today, son, was so stupid. If I had ordered a truckload of stupid people and all I got was you, I would have got my money's worth. And so, and you know what? But I never once thought, never once, he doesn't love me. Never.
Yeah.
He's being mean to me.
Yeah.
Never. He was being comedic about stop doing stupid things.
Yeah.
You know, and it didn't hurt. I mean, it was hilarious.
Yeah.
I tell these things at men's conferences and people roar at my dad. My dad would be arrested today.
Yeah.
But what he was doing is saying, don't take yourself so serious. I'm going to have a little fun at your expense. Okay. But I don't mean anything hateful by it.
Yeah.
You know, and people say, well, that was a hateful thing for your dad to say. It really wasn't. It was exaggeration to make a point.
Yeah.
He really didn't think I was an imbecile. He really didn't. He didn't think I was stupid. He was saying this situation makes you look stupid, so stop acting this way. And I got it. You know, now it's like, oh, I got to watch what I do in comedy because somebody, you wouldn't believe the emails I get now of things that hurt people's feelings. I'm thinking to myself, are you serious? That hurt your feelings? And there was a time, and I think you've made a really larger point. A lot of it goes back to we're taking comedy and people don't have the ability to laugh at themselves. They don't give permission to be laughed at anymore. And so then when life gets hard, which it is, you know, we always walked around with a little bit of a thick skin.
Yeah.
So we could persevere. We could handle struggle. We could handle conflict, disappointment, difficulty. Now someone says, I don't ever want to feel bad. I don't ever want to have to be challenged. You can't say, we literally we did a story this week, Brad Stine, last week. Fat people, I've struggled with my weight since I was 19 years old.
Yeah, you're huge. You're gigantic. I can barely look at you.
It means the world to me that you would say that, because that means you deeply love me.
Deeply love you and your idiosyncrasies.
Right. What you stated is obvious, just like you being short. We all know. Yes. Okay. So anyway, but what I'm saying is we're now to the point, listen to what I'm about to say, that people who are heavy now find January to be offensive. I'm not making this up, because everybody at the office starts making commitments to lose weight and be healthier. And they want when you're thinking about your diversity plan, I'm not making this up. You go research it. We believe that people, when you're thinking about your diversity plan, heavy people should be included, that they shouldn't be made to hear things about weight because it makes them uncomfortable and feel bad about themselves. January is now offensive. I can't take January. I'm large, and I can't take people around me talking about trying to lose weight. Can you believe that? Now fat jokes are out?
Not with me. You know, I got to say this.
January, it bothers me. Think about that. Okay.
Well, but here's the thing, Rick. Here's the thing, and this is something that I've said to people on my little podcast here from the get-go. I don't know when you guys started your radio show if you had a plan. You know, maybe you just said, let's just see if we can be funny and pull this off because this is hard enough, and then you find your DNA as time goes on. You find your chemistry, right?
Yeah.
But when I started this podcast, I said to people right off the bat, I said, let me tell you something. I have a career where I can stand in front of people and they laugh and they clap and tell me how great I am, how funny I am. So trust me when I say I didn't start this for my ego. A lot of people do because they don't have this outlet. I have one.
Right.
I don't need to do this. I said I will do this for one reason. One, if it's bearing fruit. If I'm saying things that you think matter in America based on what I believe and stand, and it inspires you and helps you, then I'll do it. I'll stick around because you keep showing up. But I said this, what I'm not going to do is I do not want the show that talks about how great conservatives are, and we find something that a leftist did, and we go, could you imagine if a Republican had done that or a right guy? And I'm like going, enough with that. We get it. It's unfair. It's unjust.
Got it.
We are censored. We don't get the same option. We now have an FBI that's compromised, a CIA that's compromised, an attorney general that's compromised, an entire administration that's compromised. We have people that literally are attacking one side of Americana, even though we're all paying the same taxes for the same infrastructure, and they have weaponized. This is literally what totalitarianism is. I do believe the 2020 election was stolen. That was the end of the republic because the people didn't get to vote. So that's where we're at. That's the truth of where we sit right now as Americans. So I'm not going to sit here and wring my hands and think I did something clever by talking about how unfair it is that the left isn't treated the same. That's a given. What I am saying is this: if we don't have proactive tools to go forth and try to actually do something to change this, we're screwed. So why don't we just admit it and decide, do you have something in your life worth dying for? Because I'm not kidding. The Revolutionary War wasn't a myth. The Civil War wasn't a legend that we get to use like Thor or Zeus. It was regular Americans looking at each other going, is this real? Are we going to shoot each other? Because this is crazy. And the founders said from the get-go, our DNA was, you're made in the image of God, that liberty and freedom and the pursuit of happiness is God-breathed. It can never be taken from anybody that's a fellow human because they don't have the credentials to pull that from you. It was transcendent, given by God. And it's worth fighting for. It's worth dying for, especially as a Christ follower. I know where I'm going. I know where I go. Sure. I'm good. Doesn't mean I'm flippant. Doesn't mean I'm careless. But
it means you're bold.
Well,
I mean, it gives us a boldness. I mean, think about when the Apostle Paul said, I got bad news for everybody. I've come to the point that to live as Christ, to die as gain. And once he got there, what are you going to do to him?
That's it. Yeah, no, it's like kamikaze. At this point, if you're willing to die, what am I going to scare you with?
Yeah,
but we have a legacy.
Tell us the joke's on you. I mean, who cares?
But we have I'm at that legacy time of my life where I have something I have to leave because I am not going to last that much longer just by sheer, if God happens to bless me to live into my 80s, which is pretty old, I don't have a lot of time left. So, but I do have kids and grandkids and they're stuck with this crap.
Right.
So can I do anything as citizens? One of the things I said, and this is a little, I think what we're talking about is important right now, but I do want to ask you something specific about your region of America, and I'll tell you why in a second. But one of the things that I think I have discovered, and I've said this on the podcast, I think that one of the things that made America unique was that once you came here and committed to this and became a citizen, you were an American. There's nothing like that. You don't do that in France. You don't become a citizen. You're French. You're Belgian that has a French citizen. But here, you became an American. That's what made it so unique. You blended, you became part of it. You brought the best of your ethnicity, the best of your history, best of your culture. You brought it in here, you added to the milieu, and next thing you know, you got the greatest country in human history.
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe that anymore. I believe we have to differentiate between a citizen of the United States of America and an American. You see, all Americans are citizens, but I now believe that not all citizens are Americans. If you don't believe in the Constitution, if you don't believe it's worth fighting for, if you don't believe in freedom, if you don't believe in limited government, if you don't believe states' rights, if you don't believe in defending yourself, if you don't believe you have the sovereignty to defend your nation, not to be unkind to people, but simply to say we need the best of you to come in here for the right reasons so that we can count on your virtue, because if, as a constitutional republic, we are the government. Thus, if we are unvirtuous, we will crumble because we're cancer in this host. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm curious, since you're in Alabama, and we joked about the stereotype and whatnot, but the truth is stereotypes work because they are kind of true.
Yeah.
They're kind of true.
Yeah, they are.
If you go to, I just was in Texas, if I go to Alabama, if I go to Florida, if I go to Mississippi, if I go to Georgia, if I go to Tennessee, they have guns. They're carrying guns around.
Yeah.
They take them to church.
That's
They really do. They really do go hunt deer and skin them right there and, field dress them. They really do like their trucks. They really do. There's a cultural element about the South that is different.
It is.
Than Manhattan, than Hollywood. I'm not saying even necessarily better. I'm glad that we are a diverse kind of group. But I do want to ask you about that, just because I'm curious. If you're from the South, I'm not. I was born in Indiana, so I'm a Yankee. But
we all have things we're not proud of. No problem.
I know.
Don't be hard on you.
I felt like that was my moment of humility.
Right.
I normally wouldn't bring it up in front of an Alabamian, as you can cleanly guess. Right. But I did this time for just, again, to show my...
There's nothing quite like garnering no response than by saying I'm from Indiana.
Well...
Nobody even knows what to do with that.
We don't.
Oh, good for you.
Well, listen,
you don't know where to laugh. You don't know where to say, well done. You don't even, when you say I'm from Alabama, see, that garners a reaction.
Of course.
It was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So I want to dive in. But the question you were asking was the Southern culture. Do you say, are you asking me?
Well, so here's what
some of what you just said still alive here?
Well, here's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm curious about. What does it mean, or does it mean anymore, to be a Southerner? Because if one thing I will give you guys credit, you were all in your heritage. You weren't embarrassed. You weren't ashamed. Now, you've got a little bit of a element of this country's history that could be certainly perceived as not that to be proud of. You were trying to secede from the Union. You were trying to say move on. And here's my dilemma, Rick. I believe in states' rights, and to a certain degree, that's what the South was fighting for, was you don't get to tell us what to do. Now, because of slavery, it was a whole monkey wrench in the whole thing.
Well, and that was wise for Lincoln to bring that in. That was a wise move. It kept, France out of it for coming to the South's aid and all that. But here's what I would say. First of all, let's start with that historic moment. It was not a civil war. That's been horribly misnamed. That historically is not correct. The South was not trying to go to the sitting government and overthrow it. That's a civil war. It was an attempt at independence that was denied. It was not a civil war. The South was going to create their own country. They weren't trying to replace the one that was already in power. So it's not a civil war. I don't know how that label stuck. It was we were going to secede the South, and we were denied the ability to do that because we couldn't win the war. So the Union said, we will break your will to continue to declare your independence, and they did. And so, and I think that don't hear me say that I think that was a disaster. Now, I will say there's a lot of you that think about this seceding thing. Does it seem so weird now? But anyway, the whole slavery issue was really an issue that was evil, and it should not have been allowed to go on. But that really wasn't the point. It was your point. The states were saying, look, slavery was going out anyway. Once Wilberforce got his deal going in Europe and in England, it was on its deathbed. Thank the Lord for that. But so the South was not going to be able to keep this up. What they were saying is what you said. We got a plantation system going here that if y'all just pull the plug out, we can't survive, and we need to decide that for ourselves.
Right.
That's a state right, not a federal right. And then of course they lost the war when they said we'll secede and we'll do our own thing. So you have that baggage hanging around in the South. You've got the baggage of the civil rights movement hanging around the South. And what the left has brilliantly done is they have acted like, as Democrats, they had nothing to do with that. And remember now, if you had something in your past, the Democrats say you must be defined by that for the rest of your life. When we say to the Democratic Party, well, based on your logic, you shouldn't be allowed to exist because of your behavior during the Civil Rights Movement, conveniently, and the Civil War, conveniently, they have given themselves forgiveness for their past, but you don't get forgiveness for yours. Yeah. So they somehow have said that the same South that they ran that did all these horrible things was not them. It was actually Democrats who now call themselves Republicans, and the new Democrats are actually progressive, right, and liberals, which that's just propaganda is all that is. I still say that they're bigots. They just do it a different way. But that's another monologue. But in the South, I think there is still that patriotism that you talk about is much more prominent than other parts of the country. And I even think sometimes our show and the way Southerners see the world, first of all, Southerners, when we have tornadoes and hurricanes, we just fix it ourselves. And people who love a giant central government hate that. Go back and watch the coverage of Mississippi cleaning up after Katrina versus the Democratic-run New Orleans. Mm. New Orleans got all the publicity for their plight, and it was bad because they waited on the federal government to fix it. Mississippi just fixed themselves, and so they didn't get any headlines on their coast, yeah, because they handled it themselves. Yeah. The church here still always gets water and clothing and shelter to people long before the government does. Right. They do a much better job than the government, and we're kind of look after yourself and look after each other people still. But you'll see, like in Texas, being in Texas and being in Houston and Austin are two completely different things. Yeah. Alabama now, you're starting to see, being in Alabama used to be it's the same from top to bottom, from left to right. But now you get kind of this Huntsville thing and this Mobile thing that's a little bit different. It's you see a little bit of the wokeness trying to grab ground there. Georgia has changed dramatically with Atlanta and the way those things have changed. So the South isn't as reliable when it comes to the Constitution and patriotism and being an American as maybe it once was. But I still think there's a lot more of the remnant left here than some of the other parts of the country.
Well, I do agree with that, and because of the baggage, so to speak, that is certainly used as leverage whenever they want to keep you from building any momentum, it's a challenge. I mean, the difference between CRT and Christianity is that we understand, both admit that people are sinners,
right?
But ours offers something that is so necessary in the human component. We offer forgiveness, redemption, repentance, grace. None of that is offered in critical race theory, because critical race theory comes out of critical law theory, which came from the postmodern relativistic Frankfurt School of cultural Marxism. So it's all Marxism. Marxism's atheism.
Oh yeah.
It's all about control, all about power. It's more French Revolution vibe than American Revolution, and so this is what I'm kind of exploring right now with you as a Southern guy, because on one hand you said, we were really just wanting to secede. All right, you don't want to let us live the way we choose, which ironically was what the New England said to Brits.
Correct.
Like, listen, we started this place. We made this work. We've been doing this for years, self-governing. You decide, now we're going to tax you and decide. You said, no, you don't. This is our place now. And so we secede, and they become the United States.
Yeah.
So the South decides for the same reason that they feel this is infringing on their ability to live the world that they've created and their economy they created. Again, clearly, I don't know of any Southern,
Yeah.
certainly nowadays, that would said, yeah, what we were fighting for was we needed slavery, even though slavery obviously is the only way they could continue to.
Yeah, it's when you go back, if you don't believe what we just said about it being misnamed a civil war, they tried to um, prosecute Jefferson Davis, but they couldn't because every time they would try to legally put him away, they would keep running into the fact that, well, they actually had the right to do what they did. They lost the war, and now we're all going to be a union, and there's going to be a price to pay for trying to do this. But really what they did was not against the Constitution. They just could not pull it off.
Yeah.
And so you remember Jefferson Davis was eventually set free.
Yeah.
But because they couldn't really say what he did was a crime.
Right. Well, and of course it was unprecedented. It was kind of once you do anything new, you got to kind of go with the flow, because it's like when the Corona cult hit. Suddenly we weren't. It kind of cold cocks you, and then when you come to, you try to manage things.
Well, you think about like the Second Amendment. It's like we have people in our country right now, they just can't wrap their mind around it.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it, but you can't pretend it's not there. And what it was there for, and it was there for citizens to arm themselves so they had a chance against people who try to steal their land, criminals, but also so they'd have a chance against an overreaching government.
Of course.
And that's why it's there, because the Constitution wasn't worth much if you didn't have the ability to defend it. Yeah, and I've heard people say our freedom is never paid for. It's a lease. That's true, and people have paid it for you and me. And I think your passion is we've got to stand up and pay it for those that come after us.
Yeah, it's our turn. Well, but I guess okay. So again, I'm back to this because it's interesting to me. Is that number one? We saw what happened to Canada. They're almost completely. I don't know what they're going to do. These poor people in Australia. What's the difference? They don't have the guns. So the one thing that makes America incredibly difficult if there's a new world order trying to infiltrate is we do have guns.
Well, go back to what happened during the summer of chaos. There was never once, not one time. There was talk of it, and then the warning came down. They didn't do it. Not one time did they weren't. I mean, you got they're anarchists is what they were. It's one thing to want freedom and independence, but anarchy is no law, no order, and that's what we saw.
That's
so
not peacefully protest.
Yeah, the mobs wanted to come in and take whatever they wanted and commit violence against you, but you weren't allowed to shoot back. But if you go back and look, never once did they attack a southern neighborhood, not suburbia. Now, in cities, you can get away with this because people aren't armed. They're not allowed to have their guns. You start taking this garbage out into suburbia or out into the country, you're not going to get very far because the people can defend themselves.
And
what did these bullies do? We don't want people shooting back, so we won't bother them. That's why we have it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you never have to use it, but you have it so that predators, whether that be government or criminal, don't just run up and take your stuff because they're afraid you'll shoot back.
Well, but
you
I
saw
guess,
it during that just 2 summers ago.
Yeah. Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that even though there was some draconian measures within the United States that clearly were unconstitutional. I mean, I never wore a mask. I don't know. I'm guessing you probably didn't either. I know you.
I didn't. In Alabama, we didn't even know people had masks.
Okay.
Right. We had no idea. It was it's a different world.
Yeah, well, and again, if you see a guy coming up to you with a mask in Alabama, they do shoot him. It's like, that can't be a good guy.
Or we say you must be from Indiana.
Yeah, right. But I guess what I'm saying is that when you saw how oppressive and how they treated Canadian, I'm talking about Western cultures now. Obviously, what happened to everybody else. But when they saw how they treated them in Australia, how they treated them, why wasn't it nearly as aggressive here? And I think and I'm not saying it's because they thought somebody's going to suddenly shoot them. I
No,
think
no,
that the
no.
very fact that America has this DNA
There it is.
that says we will not permit this, and I'll bet you a lot of the policemen and so forth were saying, I don't want to do this. This is not my people. So that's, I guess, what I'm getting at. So here was the South uh, trying to secede, doesn't pan out, and suddenly you, this far down the road, have become maybe the most patriotic,
Right.
the most pro-union, as in the Union of the United
Sure.
States.
Yeah.
You're so proud of your Southern roots and so proud of your Southern states, but interesting how that integrated into becoming just a back to an American citizen, and we'll be the most. If you need help when the crap hits the fan, come on down here because I promise we have a couple ARs laying
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the very ancestors, I know people move here, but the same, and a lot of people are moving here, by the way, but the same ancestors that once tried to secede from the Union now have become the Union's only hope.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and so there's
And that's the way it feels because you touched on it. I was on the air when all this. We must mandate the vaccine. We must mandate the mask. We must tell people they can't open their business. We're going to destroy their livelihood. And I remember saying on the air, and you just echoed it, is what happened. I said, let me tell you what everybody's underestimating here. Patrick Henry flows through our veins. Give me liberty or give me death. This culture is not going to go along with this. There's too much Patrick Henry in us.
I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about that time. I said there's only so far that what we would consider the ones who have the right mindset of being an American, that actually, even though they never lived under it, their parents and grandparents and great grandparents did a great job of passing along. And this is the problem we have now. We have a generation that does not understand what it's like to truly live under tyranny. They have no idea.
Yeah.
They think they want this, but they have no idea what it really will be like. And they'll be the first ones to scream, what's happened? What have we done? But our fathers and founding fathers, they knew what it was like to live under tyranny, right, which is why they said, any power you give a central government, they will abuse it.
Yeah.
So don't give it to them.
Yeah.
You've limited them inside this document. Don't let them out. And everywhere we've let the government out, they've abused it, just as our founders told us they would. And Southerners, they know the Constitution. They understand what we did, even with our little dust up when we tried to leave. Now we understand that this experiment of liberty, which was designed this way, you said it earlier, God-given potential can be achieved through God-given liberty. The liberty allows us to maximize each of our individual potential. Are we all the same? We're not. Okay? We all have different gifts and deficits, and that's what makes this place great. But if we give you maximum liberty, whatever you have, you can maximize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's called the American dream, American ingenuity. They don't have any of those terminologies overseas.
Not that way in Europe. When I've been to France, everything is the government. The government provides everything. They think you're weird if you want to help your neighbor. They want to know
and it's sad to me.
They want to know what your angle is.
But this is what I find interesting, Rick, because clearly it shows how important philosophy and ideology of a culture is, because you feel certain ways with subconsciously. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like the atheists don't understand that when they think it's unjust to have a slave, they think that's intrinsic. That's how humans just automatically feel, that if a guy's being enslaved, why, that's not right. No, Christians taught you that.
That's correct.
And now it's become so far down the road, 2,000 years worth of Judeo-Christian, because actually the new Torah, "Thou shalt not steal," was essentially saying you can't take something that's not yours, which would include a human. So that was the first sort of commandment by God. You don't get to steal people. But nevertheless, I'm interested though in the understanding. When I started doing the podcast too, like I said, when I want to just sort of see if we have proactive things we can actually accomplish as opposed to just wringing our hands. Maybe not, but let's try. and so one of the things I did, like, I don't know if you know Cameron Arnett. He's a black actor in Georgia. He's been in a lot of the faith-based films, good guy. But him and I had a good discussion like this. And one of the things I said was, every time we turn around and you get a BLM or you get a CRT or whatever, you hear the same thing. We need a national conversation on race. And it's like, you can't have one.
No.
I can't have one. Because if I say I don't understand this or I don't agree with this, you call me a racist, a bigot, so I don't want to play it. I'm not going to have it. It's not a conversation.
Right.
You're just demanding that I'm punished even for being ignorant about something. I'm not allowed to ask you. I don't know. I don't understand why you feel this way. That doesn't mean because I think you're less than me or I'm superior. I'm trying to find truth so we can see if there's some foundation we can all agree with. So I asked him about statues, and I want to quickly jump into this. I know we're getting to the end of the thing, and I don't want to hold you too long, but I appreciate your time. But I did want to ask you about that because you're a Southern guy. And he said, I never believed in pulling down statues. Now, this guy's from Jamaica or Haiti, Jamaica, I think. But he's been American most of his life. He's black, and he lives in Georgia. So his thing was, leave him up because it's history, but maybe put a plaque saying, this guy did kind of do this, this, and this too. Okay, well, that's cool. And then I said, as long as you also say the First Amendment right, you have to say that and not get shot, was given you by that same guy. So are we all going to realize that we all are flawed, but also have done good things? So let me ask you about statue. You talk about Jefferson Davis. I got to be honest, dude. And again, this is just being raw. What people want to do with this or try to turn it into, I don't give a crap. I'm speaking the truth, letting it fall where it may. The Southern Jefferson, and I'm in Tennessee now. They got all the monument and the stuff. These are all Confederate generals and whatnot, and antebellum mansions and whatnot. And they had slaves and they had fields and whatnot. Didn't bother me in the least. I don't care if you have a Southern. I don't care. I don't sit and worship at his feet. I don't sit there and admire him. I just figured he was a general, fought for these guys. They're proud of him because he tried to defend them. They put up a monument. All right, we're looking back at a couple hundred years at hindsight, 150 years hindsight. Yeah, okay, we've evolved. That was wrong. Maybe they should have seen it differently. But they were kind of stuck economically. But it didn't bother me. And in recent times, trying as a Christ follower to deal with truth, whether I like it or not, I started going, I guess if I was black and I walked past the statue of Jefferson Davis that you in tribute, I'm going, no, I'm not crazy about that. Because my people were slaves under a man saying, let's keep it that way. The flag, the Confederate flag, never bothered me because to me, white guy, Northerner though, said that's just the Southerners being pro, Southern, and rebel yell, and we're just woohoo, and get a shotgun, go get a cap fade, wop, wop. And I didn't care. To me, it was their culture. But now, in hindsight, if I'm trying to be fair, and I was black, I could say, I don't like that. I don't like that flag. It means a whole different world to me. And I'm going to say this last thing, then I'm going to let you comment. Years ago at Promise Keepers, when I used to perform there, Tony Evans, the black pastor from Dallas, a wonderful pastor, great guy. I was doing my put a helmet on routine from 2003, and I have this whole thing about coming across America on a boat, and these were hard people. They brought their kids, and they were throwing up, but they didn't care. And just this whole idea of how America got started, because I'm proud of my heritage. Men were laughing. Everybody loves it. I'm so great. You're the funniest guy. I leave. Evans comes up after me, looks at the crowd, and he goes, well, that wasn't the boat I was on.
And there it is. Yeah.
And I laughed, and they all did. But then I kind of thought, Rick, for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, I assume if you're an American, you're proud of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Pilgrims, Mayflower, Revolutionary War, because it's all our heritage, and it is. But it was the first time I kind of thought, there is a group here whose heritage doesn't follow that lineage. They were brought here. Doesn't mean they can't be some of the best patriots, and they are. So. But I got to be honest, it made me go, maybe there's more here than I've allowed myself or even didn't even care to acknowledge. That needs to be at least examined as if there's a fair case to be made. I think those statues aren't cool. I don't think they deserve to be there. We're United States now. That's my soliloquy. You're a Southerner, you're a Christ follower, you're a man of God, and you're a truth teller. What am I missing?
Well, a lot of what you said is absolutely right. First of all, I believe that the Confederate battle flag belongs in a museum. I don't think it should be hid away from the world. It should be where it can be seen, it can be discussed by people of all ethnicities, because we need to know what happened. We can't, it feels so wicked when I think of all the horrible tyrannical governments of the past that rewrote history and decided what you could and could not know about the history of the country. So I don't like that. I don't like censoring it and acting like we shouldn't even see it. I kind of agree a little bit with the actor you were talking about. Here's Jefferson Davis. Let me tell you, children, why he's here. This, and this. It's a museum.
Yeah.
Now, when people start having, well, it's Robert E. Lee's birthday too, not just Martin Luther King Jr. Well, see, I think that's silly. Let's not do that. That takes us nowhere. I don't think it's fair to make Robert E. Lee out to be an evil human being. If you studied him, he's actually not.
Yeah.
Now, was he part of a war where he was on the wrong side of it? When it comes to slavery, yes. But he also did a lot of really good things and was a brilliant guy who by all accounts, we're all flawed, loved Jesus, loved God. And so I'm for, you do need to understand that it's not a party for everybody, like what Tony said when you were there. But you can take that same thing and go, let's talk to the old man on why it bothers him when he goes to the grave of his grandfather that fought in the Civil War, and you say his grandfather was evil. His grandfather was a farmer who never owned slaves, and he was called to defend the South against what he was told was a tyrannical central government that wanted to destroy his way of life. He wasn't a racist. He wasn't a bigot. He was a farmer who went and fought for what he didn't want to lose. And he doesn't like his granddaddy being called an evil, wicked man.
Right.
You have to understand that too. So, but I do not think, when I see the Confederate flag flying over government buildings, and a lot of that's been done away with, it should have been done away with. We are a union now. We are not the Confederacy, and it should not be there. It needs to be in a museum. And some people say, well, Rick, that's not fair. Leonard Skinner had it behind them. That was just our culture. True, but whether you like it or not, hate groups have used it as their symbol. That may not be fair, but they have. And that's some of your white supremacists and KKK. And so the fact that it has a negative connotation, I think it's okay to love people enough to say, I don't want to put that. Do you really need the rebel flag? Does it mean that much to you? Historic, yes. Should it be hidden away from the world? No. Should it be flying above the American flag in your yard? No. Should it be over a government building above the American flag or even near it? No. Is it offensive to people? Yes. Why? I think we know why. So be sensitive to that. If it means that much to you, you probably do have a problem. It is funny when someone says, I don't know why I was so offended by it. Why do you care so much about it? Yeah. You can also look at that too, because I'm not for getting rid of the history. Don't misunderstand me. I don't like that whitewashing the history, no pun intended. I don't like that at all. We need to know so we can learn.
Yeah.
And I really, it was Ben Carson that said this. He said, I don't like silencing people's speech. The bigots and the racists and the misogynists, they're still among us. Let's hear them. Let's know where they are. Yeah. Let them speak their mind. I want to hear what they have to say. Yeah. And see, where Christians who get on board with this censoring everything, you don't understand. This is a ploy. You and I are going to be censored.
Yeah.
What we believe is going to be deemed hate speech. So you got to be careful jumping on the hate speech wagon. So I do not find the clinging to the Confederacy to be something Southerners should do. I think that's a mistake. I
From
understand.
what? From what is a mistake
The South's going to
from a
rise.
from a Christian
Yeah,
perspective? Is it a mistake because of almost a nationalism? Because it, is there a symbol? Because I think, and again, this is trying to be truthful in our conversation.
I don't hide from symbols. I'm like you. I'm not
Yeah,
bothered by it, but I'm also not black.
right.
And but I will say this: I'm also not loyal to it. I don't. I don't. Well, there's Jefferson Davis. Just pause for a moment of silence. Nothing like that. Or hey, I got my rebel flag flying today. The South's going to rise again. I don't do any of that. But I also think it can also be just as bad to eradicate all that from society,
Oh, of course.
as if it. I love how when people, you just said it, if we're going to have a conversation, you can't then do a handout saying, except for these things.
Yeah,
These things can't be included in the conversation. Well, now it's not a conversation.
and it's not a
Now
conversation.
we've been assigned what we can and can't say. A conversation is this: I can say anything to you, and you can say anything to me.
Right, right.
And that's when we walk things out. And you might even hear something to go, oh, wait a minute. I tell people that I don't want them to think less of me because of the color of my skin, but I just thought less of that guy because he had a rebel flag on his car. I just talked to him. He's really not a racist or a bigot at all. I just did to him what I don't want people to do to me.
Right. Well,
You
and
know,
it's a perspective because, like you said, if first off, this whole again another smokescreen. Well, you just don't want to teach the true history of America. I want to teach every bit of the history
all
of
of it.
America, but you know why? Well, we hate slavery. You know why you know about slavery, and I know about slavery because they taught it in school. They've never not taught us about slavery and things in
No,
school. Now,
we
if there
need
were
to know
some
that.
elements left out or some nuance that we want to bring into the case, I don't give a crap. As long as it's true, I'm not afraid of the truth. As
No,
long as
well,
it's,
what we've done, we've gone the other way. One time, in fairness, we presented America as flawless and perfect, and that was wrong.
yeah,
But now we present it as terrible and horrible, and it's
right,
done nothing with. And that's
nothing.
equally as wrong.
Yeah,
Let's tell the good things that America has done, and you'll find there are many. And let's talk about the things that we didn't do well. Let's tell it all. I'm with you.
yeah.
Tell it all.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying is that if they wanted to have this monument up that was put up initially when the South was pretty fresh from this war, and they were looking at exactly like you said. All I know is I was raised in Mississippi. It was my land. We were just trying to sharecroppers, doing best we could, and some government was going to destroy us, and we were defending ourselves. And that was the general that led us, and so I'm proud of him. We tried to defend her. That's their perspective, and it's true.
Well, think about it. If you look back when I said about Robert E. Lee, they were all serving in the military. These were brilliant generals, and they basically went to the Confederacy because that was their home.
Yeah.
That's how the Confederacy
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that it's
almost
possible.
won it. They had some horses that were in the general roles. These were some of the America's best
Yeah.
that went back to their homeland, and probably rightfully and thankfully so, it was not successful. But you got to understand all of it. As my grandparents told me and great grandparents, they didn't know anybody who owned slaves. That was wealthy people. And a
Yeah.
lot of these people in this war were not wealthy.
Right.
They were fighting for what they thought they'd been told, whether it was right or not, that they were going to lose their land if they didn't fight against the government. So we try to take our history and make it like a TV show. Here's the good guy. Here's the bad guy. This is what we consider good. This we consider bad. And it's all going to work out in a nice little narrative. We're complicated people, and our history is complicated, and it's dangerous for us to be afraid to look at all of it and look at it deeply. That's
Well,
a mistake.
exactly. And that's what I was trying to say. And again, this would be what I either said or I'm about to say is easily clipped and turned into a soundbite to try to make me look like a bigot or racist. But what I was trying to get at was just as and I admitted it, looked at the Confederate flag or Jefferson Davis, and I just didn't care. It's like that happened here. That was their little thing. I'm not a Southerner, but if that's their little deal, whatever. Didn't bother me. So, in some respects, perhaps, if I'm a true American and believe in freedom and for all men, I didn't do my homework. Maybe there was more that I was responsible for. Well, there's a reason why these people feel differently than you, so be aware of it. But just like you said, can the black person look at the white Southerner who said, hey, man, I just know that I was trying to defend my land, and that's how we saw it. So even we're looking at the same symbol, we're interpreting it differently, and we're assuming the worst of each other when it's not necessarily the case. Let me ask you this then, as we get close to the end here, Rick. Is there a symbol of the South that you could utilize to kind of represent what it meant to be a Southerner that could be replaced that element that would kind of say, this is what the Southerner is. Here's another way for us to just be proud of the region that we were born in.
Well, I think when you think about Southerners, the one thing that would stand out is hospitality. I don't know what a symbol of hospitality would be.
Casserole?
Maybe, but people from all over the world who come here, and they'll come here to be guests on the show, they go, I thought this was some stereotype again. I cannot believe how kind and wonderful. And if you ever want to understand that, go and look at the numbers, and you will find that one state that gives the most in our union is Mississippi, and they're one of our poorest.
I think they are the poorest.
And they give the most. They are, my goodness, the lights have gone out. They're sacrificial, let there be light. They're sacrificial, hardworking, humble people.
You mean they give charity, or what do you mean?
Yes. Yeah, they give to charities. Anytime there's a storm somewhere and you need to fundraise, the people in Mississippi, they get out their pocketbook and they give, but they give when it hurts.
Yeah.
A lot of people give when it doesn't hurt. They give sacrificially.
Right.
And they would literally give you the coat off their back.
Yeah.
So I think if there's anything, when you make fun of the South and you put the South down and you do all the stereotypes, there's one thing that no one can deny, is that the Southern people will take care of you. They're neighborly, they're hospitable,
Yeah.
and they will give you what you need, even if they have to do without.
I agree.
And I think that's probably one thing that I could stand on that would say, I don't think anybody can disprove that.
I think that's exactly true. Well,
so probably a helping hand maybe would be the symbol, a hand coming out.
No, not that I'm trying to have you manufacture some new.
No, it's a profound question. Yeah.
Yeah. But because it deserves to be respected, just like, I guess I'm proud of Indiana. I mean, I'm not a big whatever, but it's kind of in our nature. Where you're born, you feel is your roots. More than likely your families. My grandparents were farmers in Indiana. So there's a attachment there, a lineage that I can't deny. And I'm not trying to. But I guess as I put a close to this great interview, and I really appreciate it again, brother, because you're a good man, and I'm so proud you're my friend, and very proud, and more importantly, that you're courageous, because holy crap, did we see where the cowards were during the corona. So I'm grateful when I know there's still warriors out there that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. But I'm a Hoosier, Indiana Yankee, with a good Southerner, but the reason that we can be close first is our faith. I've always said I do not worship the United States of America. I worship Jesus Christ, but I am grateful for the greatest nation the world has ever known, and I don't want to lose it if I can help it on my watch. So for my people who, believe it or not, watch from all over the world, but my territory is the United States. This is where my responsibility is. This is where my people is. This is why I'm a missionary to America. We also have this patriot, constitutional love of our country and respect for our country that also binds you and I together. And in the big picture, millions of us out there in the same boat who feel hopeless, Rick. We've watched what we consider no longer the ability to vote out the bad guys. We feel like we have a weaponized a government system, how do I fight an FBI raid? I don't care how many ARs you got. I'm just a guy with a professional SWAT team. Come on, let's be realistic. It's not that easy. If it got down to the, God forbid, bloodshed, we can't even mobilize. Because if I go and say to Facebook, hey, I'm starting a local militia chapter, we're going to practice to bring your AR, we're going to be down at the creek tomorrow, and we're going to find the general so we know how our marching orders are going. It's going to last 2 minutes.
Right.
I can't even talk to each other to have a coherent militia if I wanted one. It's not as easy and as flippant as it sounds. But nevertheless, we're at a breaking point in this nation. We have people hating each other. We have two completely different ideologies that cannot coincide. Something's got to give. So as a man of God, as a patriot, as a Southerner, as a wise person, and as someone who cares about truth, in whatever form or way that you feel led, give us some answers, some ideas, some thoughts about what do we do as Americans to try to rebuild and re-remember this country.
Well, the answer has always been the church. It has. And I know they go, oh, here goes two followers of Christ going to tell us the answer is the church, but it is. And what's happening is there was a time when our country believed that. They believed that the church was the answer, but now they believe the church is actually the problem. So the persecution of the Western church is beginning. It will intensify, and we will be the voice that will have to stand up and remind everyone about why this country was blessed. And it was because there was a general devotion, and in some cases a devout devotion, to the one and only living God, and understanding that freedom is ultimately given by him, and it can't be given to you by man, and it can't be taken away from you by man. And now we have now found ourselves worshiping the government and not worshiping God. And earthly governments have always been problematic, and Romans 13 tells you they're really just here to keep order. And what we've done is turn them into something, I don't know, that has some sort of deity, which it was never intended to be that way. So we've got to move away from that. And I do believe that the answer, and it's going to be difficult, is we've got to counter the indoctrination of the progressives in the educational system and the universities, because if the generations are brainwashed into seeing America in a false way, there's no saving it. And so we're going to have to do our job of educating our children and grandchildren and trying to indoctrinate a generation into the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, the true history of the country, and why a giant central government is always a problem. And why our Founding Fathers limited them. In the education, the government schools aren't going to do that for you. So you're going to have to do it yourself. And it has to be done. You can't just tell them to go out and vote unless they're told why. And as long as, and do we even have the vote anymore? You made a point. Who knows? I remember Benjamin Franklin. What do we have, Mr. Franklin? We have a republic if we can keep it. And he said then what we're saying now. You have to try to keep it. And the way to do that is you have to push back, and I mean with your lives. I'm not calling for some big, military revolution. I'm talking about think for yourself revolution. I'm talking about you've got to be critical thinkers. You've got to be logical. You've got to understand what game is being played and counter it, and not be sheep led in the wrong direction. You've got to think for yourself. You said it in a comedy bit when you were on our show. I still laugh about it to this day. Where was your critical thinking when you had to wear a mask in a restaurant, but you could take it off when you sat down? What, like you said, your bit is, I guess we should have all been in wheelchairs and we didn't ever caught it. Think about how ridiculous that is. So why did you not in your mind go, that doesn't make any sense? What is this game they're playing with us? So we're gonna have to get more aware of the fact that there's propaganda that is being presented to us everywhere, and to critically think through it, and then to train our children and our grandchildren on why the direction of those that want to undermine the Constitution and create a giant central government, why throughout history that has always been a problem, and we should push back against it with everything we have.
Amen. Well, I'm 100% on board. Like I said, I'm trying to basically launch what I call the militia of the mind, and I want to get different folks like you, people that are of note, have a brand, make little 2 and 3 minute videos, kind of like PragerU's, but that'll go on to social, talking about how great America is, what is really true, not apologizing, not making excuses. This is what is true, just to show what it looks like for people that will not be controlled. And maybe we'll make a dent, but I'm 100% on board. I think we have to make an absolute vigilant, concerted effort back to academia, into the universities and our school systems, and say, we're going to end it. I don't know how you do it, because we still have to be constitutional about it. But if you're teaching things that are clearly trying to undermine and destroy the nation, I think there's probably good cause to believe that we can push that back and probably cripple them, whether going to their donors and saying, this has to end. So either we will make this university self-destruct and eliminate it, or we will demand that they have at least equal amount of conservatives as leftist professors, so that we can have a balance. We have to do something, Rick. We can't wring our hands anymore. Hell is here, and we are in the fight of our lives. Well, brother, I will say this. I hope if things go south, no pun intended, that we're in the same gulag together.
Yes.
But if, on the other hand, we come out the other side, realizing that another battle was waged, existential battle in America, and we fought like men, and we won. God wins every time. But what's going to happen to America is yet to be written.
Yep.
But I know that if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with my sword drawn and ready to play and throw back. I'm not going to go down a slave and a wuss. So be it. God bless you, brother. God bless what you do, folks. As I've said a million times, political correctness is killing us. PC free is liberty. And if I have any legacy that I will leave, it's simply this. All I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep. God bless you, brother.
Thank you. Be bold.
See you.